Okay, in today's blog I'm going to be discussing one of the most common questions we get asked in clinic and in online sales. Basically that question is, what size derma roller do I need? Now when I'm referring to what size of derma roller, I'm not actually talking about the gauge or the thickness of the needle. In this particular blog I'm going to talk purely just about the different needle lengths, because derma rollers come in a variety of lengths. Now when I'm talking about derma rollers, I'm of course talking about a roller similar to this, often called a skin needling roller or a collagen induction system. So this is what I'm talking about, a small roller with a group of very tiny needles attached to the end. Now these rollers have two primary purposes. The first is to increase transdermal absorption, or absorption of anti-aging or cosmetic or pharmaceutical in some cases, or natural products through the skin. The second major use is to increase collagen induction under the skin, and this is where derma rollers have primarily got their reputation for their incredible anti-aging properties, their ability to treat scars and so forth. It's mainly through their collagen inducting activities. Okay, I'm going to start with the smallest roller available on the market. Now these are usually 0.2 or 0.3mm rollers. They're sold by some companies as home use rollers. Now the home use rollers, basically, there's some debate, but it's generally accepted that they are long enough to increase transdermal absorption, or absorption of products through the skin, but it's known now that they are definitely not long enough to induce collagen in any way. So without inducing collagen, you're actually losing a large portion of the effectiveness of any roller. At White Lotus, we don't personally sell 0.2 or 0.3mm rollers, because we think if they're not inducing collagen, you're generally not getting the effects you're paying for at home. So that's the first length, 0.2 or 0.3, the very, very short needle lengths, just for home use, and as we say, not particularly effective. The next size derma roller we generally discuss is 0.5mm, so half a millimetre long, the actual needles, so still very tiny. These are the smallest needle length that will actually induce collagen. They'll also of course increase transdermal absorption, so they're very effective for both treatments. Generally what we say is use the smallest needle length you can to achieve the results you wanted to. We have a lot of people come to us and say, oh well, they bought a 1.5 or so form for use on their face, took it home and found it quite painful, and then stopped using it, you know what I mean, didn't actually continue with the treatments, they didn't get any results. So in the end, they believed because they bought a 1.5 it would cover all bases, they'd be able to do everything with it, induce collagen, why not go the maximum? The simple reason is because it's unnecessary, and often if it's not comfortable you won't continue with the treatment. So for all general anti-aging purposes across the face and so forth, a 0.5mm roller is all you need at home. You can get results using that, and you won't have any of the problems that you may associate with some of the longer needle lengths. So I generally recommend the 0.5 as the most popular roller we sell at White Lotus, and I really think it's probably the most effective for home use if your primary treatment cause is anti-aging and just improvement of the facial texture and so forth. The next size up is the 1mm derma roller. Now the 1mm derma roller we generally recommend for hair loss, being its primary concern. The reason we use a 1mm as opposed to a 0.5mm roller for hair loss is because the hair actually obviously forms a bit of padding across the head and limits to some degree how deeply the needles penetrate. So generally to induce collagen and also to increase transdermal absorption, which is often more important with hair loss, you generally are going to need a 1mm derma roller to achieve this. In some cases, if people have particularly long, thick hair, I would even say you need a 1.5mm. This is particularly for women who have longer hair and so forth. 1.5 is often better. But for most people who are treating hair loss, there's some degree of hair thinning has already gone on there, so a 1mm is all you actually need for that. The other reason that you will often use a 1mm derma roller as opposed to a 0.5 is for pigmentation problems, age spots, pigmentation on the skin and so forth. There's no direct scientific evidence for this, but it's simple clinical observation over years. We found the 1mm derma roller is more effective for treating pigmentation than the 0.5mm. But we haven't found any better results by using a 1.5, so therefore the 1mm is the smallest needle length we've found which will get you the results with pigmentation problems. Keep in mind with pigmentation problems, we're talking about general pigmentation problems, not pigmentation problems which are often caused by autoimmune diseases and so forth. These are a much more specialised area where you actually need to go and see someone for specialist treatment, which will involve a wide variety of other treatments rather than just a derma roller. The next needle length I'd like to discuss is the 1.5mm roller. These have become increasingly popular in recent years. Some companies are recommending the 1.5mm for use in clinic and so forth for treatments on people, and you'll see most of the treatments you'll see around being offered in certain cosmetic clinics for around £400 per treatment are currently being done with a 1.5mm derma roller needles across the face. And these are the ones that you'll sometimes see the scary videos on YouTube, you know what I mean, where it looks like it's quite an unpleasant procedure. This is because you're using a 1.5mm in a clinical environment in a very aggressive manner on the skin. Our feedback from our clients and so forth has been that this is not a very effective treatment. We've had a lot of people calling us and emailing us and so forth who've had these treatments and are very, very unhappy with the results. So that's really not a way we recommend. There are good reasons, however, to use a 1.5mm derma roller in certain situations. The three primary reasons we recommend them are for scarring, stretch marks and cellulite. In these particular cases, because you've got such a build-up of the matrix of fibres in the area, you really need to penetrate those to break those fibres up, but you also need to penetrate quite deeply in many cases to actually induce the collagen below them. Now, interestingly, this is not a new technique. The Chinese have been using acupuncture needles underneath scars for thousands of years. They wouldn't have called it inducing collagen, but they knew that if you got a needle below those scars and in deep enough there, you can actually reduce the size of scars, and there's text going back thousands of years literally documenting this. So now we can do it much more quickly and at home or in clinic with a 1.5mm derma roller. And that's the reason I would use a 1.5. We don't recommend the 1.5mm to be used on the face, and definitely not at home for the reasons we mentioned earlier. It's unnecessary and you cause yourself extra pain and trauma with no extra gain. It just doesn't seem a very logical approach from our perspective. So yeah, the 1.5 does have uses in that regard. People often ask us about scars on the face then. For scars on the face, I generally don't recommend the 1.5mm derma roller. If a 0.5mm derma roller isn't going to be long enough to treat the scars in the area, we do recommend using a 1mm derma stamp. In clinic, we've just found these are more effective. It's a little bit more of a blunt technique because rather than rolling across the skin, it's stamped straight down onto the skin. But by doing it that way, you really break up the fibres in the area, and we really find we get quicker results with treating scars using that. So in regards to scars on the face, usually recommend your 0.5mm derma roller and the derma stamp. And to be honest, the derma stamp 1mm is very effective for scars on most parts of the body, so definitely consider that. But a 1.5mm derma roller, that's generally why you use it. The final needle length I want to discuss is the 2mm and 2.5mm derma rollers. Now, you very rarely see these on general sale, but I have seen one or two, particularly coming out of some of the cheaper companies here and there. Really would not recommend these for home use. They cause quite a high level of trauma. We do stock them at White Lotus, but generally it's only for cosmetic surgeons and people who deal with severe burn scars. So it's really for very medical based procedures. I wouldn't recommend them for anti-aging or treatments at home in that regard. That concludes this blog. I hope it helped. If you want any further information about derma roller needle sizes, have a look at our website. We've loaded quite a few pages on there about this information and similar. www.whitelotusantiaging.co.uk